I stared at my phone's weather app, watching the forecast shift from cloudy to sunny. Perfect beach weather for tomorrow's big family gathering. If only my stomach weren't twisted in knots about it. I'm Sarah Mitchell, 32, and until 6 months ago, I was the family's reliable one. The one who always came through with money, support, and solutions to everyone's problems. Now, I'm the family's biggest disappointment, all because I finally learned to say no. The story of how I ended up here, standing in front of our new family beach house with a suitcase and a broken trust fund, starts about a year ago. I was sitting in my office at Mitchell & Gray investment firm, no relation to Mitchell. Unfortunately, when my younger sister Olivia's name flashed across my phone screen, Sarah, her voice burst through before I could even say hello. You'll never believe what I found. The excitement in her tone made me smile despite my busy schedule. Olivia had always been the dreamer in the family, while I was the practical one who made those dreams possible. Let me guess, another vintage dress shop. I teased, minimizing the spreadsheet I'd been working on. Better. I found our perfect family beach house. My fingers froze over the keyboard. Beach house? Since when are we looking for a beach house? Since Mom mentioned wanting somewhere for all of us to gather during holidays. You know how she's always talking about having a place where the whole family can be together. Well, I found it. She paused for dramatic effect. 3 stories, 6 bedrooms, direct beach access, and get this, it's actually within our budget. I should have asked whose budget she meant, but I already knew. In my family, our budget usually meant Sarah's budget. Send me the details, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. I'll take a look when I have a chance. The listing arrived in my email seconds later. I had to admit, the photos were stunning. The house sat right on Crystal Bay Beach, its weathered gray shingles and white trim giving it that classic coastal charm. Large windows faced the ocean, and a wraparound porch promised perfect sunset views. The price made me wince. $1.2 million. Liv, I said carefully, that's a lot of money. But think about it. You make great money at your firm. I've got my interior design business taking off, and Jake's tech startup is doing well. If we all pitch in, we could make it work. Jake, our older brother, had a very different definition of doing well than I did. His startup had burned through 2 rounds of funding, both partially provided by me, and still hadn't turned a profit. We'd need at least $240,000 for the down payment, I said, doing the quick math. That's $80,000 each if we split it 3 ways. Well, Olivia's voice took on that wheedling tone I knew too well. Jake's still recovering from his divorce, and I just put everything into my new studio. But you've always been so good with money, Sarah. Maybe you could cover more up front and we'll pay you back. There it was. The familiar pull, the guilt, the expectation that I'd figure it out because I always did. I should have said no right then. Should have pointed out that I'd already loaned Jake $50,000 that he'd never repaid, or that I'd funded Olivia's first failed business venture without seeing a dime back. Instead, I heard myself say, let me look at my investments. 2 weeks later, I sat in a real estate office, signing papers that would drain half my savings. I'd agreed to put up $200,000 of the down payment, with Jake and Olivia each contributing $20,000. The understanding was that they'd pay me back over time, increasing their ownership shares as they did. Mom and Dad were thrilled, of course. They didn't contribute financially. Dad's early retirement and Mom's part-time yoga teaching didn't leave much extra, but they were full of ideas about furniture placement and holiday gatherings. This is exactly what this family needs, Mom said during the inspection, her arms spread wide in what would become the living room. A place where we can all come together, make memories. Sarah, honey, you've made this possible for all of us. I smiled, ignoring the knot in my stomach that told me I'd made a huge mistake. The renovations began immediately. Olivia, as our resident interior designer, took charge. She created mood boards, ordered samples, and scheduled contractors. All with my credit card, naturally. It's an investment in our future, she insisted when I questioned the $15,000 custom dining table. Jake, meanwhile, was suspiciously absent during the whole process. His excuses ranged from crucial investor meetings to the kids have soccer practice. Somehow, he was never available when bills needed to be paid or decisions needed to be made. Finally, after 3 months of work, countless arguments about budgets, and one particularly heated discussion about imported Italian tiles. The beach house was ready. Olivia planned a grand opening weekend for the whole family. Which brings me to today, standing in the circular driveway with my weekend bag, staring up at what was supposed to be our shared dream, but felt more like a beautifully decorated burden. "Sarah, you're early." Olivia's voice carried across the front yard. She looked perfect, as always, in a flowing white sundress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Behind her, Jake was unloading his Tesla, his new girlfriend helping his kids with their bags. "Thought I'd get settled before everyone else arrives," I said, forcing a smile. "Which room is mine?" The silence that followed should have been my first warning. Olivia and Jake exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. "About that," Olivia said, twirling a strand of her perfectly highlighted hair. "We had to make some adjustments to the room assignments." "Adjustments?" "Well, Jake needs the master suite because he has the kids every other weekend. And I'm taking the ocean view bedroom for my social media content. You know how important good lighting is for my design block. Mom and Dad obviously get the ground floor suite because of Dad's knee issues." "Olivia," I interrupted, "where am I sleeping?" She brightened, as if just remembering something wonderful. "Oh, we converted the small room off the kitchen into a combination laundry and guest space. It's actually quite clever. Very efficient use of square footage." I followed her through the house, past the rooms I paid for, past the furniture I financed, to a narrow door near the kitchen. She opened it with a flourish, revealing a space barely big enough for a twin bed, wedged between two humming washing machines. "We had to put the laundry somewhere," she explained, as if this made perfect sense. "And since you're always so practical, we thought you wouldn't mind. It's cozy." I stood in the doorway, listening to the gentle slosh of someone's beach towels spinning in the dryer, and felt something inside me finally snap. "I paid for half this house," I said quietly. "And we're so grateful." Olivia rushed to say, "But you have to understand, Jake needs space for his kids, and my work requires." "I pay for half this house," I repeated, louder this time. "I put up most of the down payment. I covered the renovations. I bought the furniture, and my reward is a bed next to the washing machines." "Don't be dramatic, Sarah," Jake called from behind us. "It's not like you'll be here that often anyway. You're always working." I turned to face my brother, taking in his expensive watch, his carefully casual designer clothes. Maybe I work so much because I'm supporting everyone else's dreams while putting my own on hold. What's that supposed to mean? Olivia's voice had taken on the sharp edge it got whenever she felt criticized. "It means I'm done." The words came out before I could stop them, but once they started, I couldn't hold back. "I'm done being the family ATM. I'm done watching you both spend my money while treating me like an afterthought. And I'm definitely done sleeping next to laundry machines in a house I mostly paid for." I pulled out my phone, fingers shaking slightly as I opened my email. "You know what's interesting about property law? I had my firm's legal team look over everything while the renovations were happening. Want to know what they found?" The silence in the hallway was absolute now, broken only by the gentle tumble of the dryer. "The deed has some very specific language about ownership shares and property rights, and since I provided the majority of the down payment," I looked up from my phone, meeting their stunned expressions. "Well, let's just say there's going to be some changes in the sleeping arrangements." The silence that followed my announcement was broken by the sound of car doors slamming outside. Mom and Dad had arrived, their timing as impeccable as ever when it came to family drama. "What do you mean changes?" Jake's face had taken on that red tinge it got whenever his control over a situation slipped. "You can't just change things. We all agreed." "No," I interrupted, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "You and Olivia agreed. You agreed to split the house 3 ways while I paid for everything. You agreed to pay me back eventually. You agreed I'd be fine with a bed between washing machines. But guess what? I never agreed to any of that." I pulled out a thick manila envelope from my bag, the one I'd been carrying around for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Inside were copies of every check I'd written, every transfer I'd made, and most importantly, the legal documents my firm's property lawyers had prepared. "Sarah," Mom's voice echoed through the foyer. "Where is everyone?" "We brought champagne." "Up here, Mom," Olivia called out, her eyes never leaving the envelope in my hands. "Sarah's having some kind of breakdown about the sleeping arrangements." I heard Mom's heels clicking on the hardwood floors, followed by Dad's heavier footsteps. They appeared behind Jake and Olivia, Mom clutching a bottle of expensive champagne, probably purchased with the credit card I'd given her for emergencies. "What's going on?" Dad asked, looking between us. "Why isn't everyone getting ready for the celebration?" "Sarah's threatening to change everything," Olivia blurted, her lower lip trembling in that way that usually made everyone rush to comfort her. "After all our hard work, after we made this beautiful space for our family, she's trying to ruin it." Mom gasped. "Sarah, how could you? This house is supposed to bring us together." I looked at my mother, really looked at her. She stood there in her designer outfit, bought with my money, holding her expensive champagne, bought with my money, in this beautiful house, bought mostly with my money, looking at me like I was the villain. "You want to know what brings families together, Mom? Respect, appreciation, equal treatment." I pulled out the first document from my envelope. "Did you know that, according to the property deed, ownership share is directly proportional to financial investment?" "What does that mean?" Jake demanded. "It means," I said, pulling out a calculator, "that based on the down payment split and renovation costs, I currently own 78% of this house. And as majority owner, I have certain rights." The color drained from Olivia's face. "You're making this up. The realtor never mentioned." "Because you never asked." I started laying out documents on the hallway console table. "You were too busy picking out paint colors and planning your Instagram posts." But I read every page of every document, and I had my lawyers review everything. "Lawyers?" Dad's voice cracked. "Sarah, we're family. We don't need lawyers." "Actually, Dad, we do, because family doesn't treat family like this." I gestured to the tiny laundry room behind me. "Family doesn't take advantage of each other. Family doesn't relegate the person who paid for everything to sleeping with the dirty towels." Jake stepped forward, his hands raised in what he probably thought was a calming gesture. "Look, if the room assignments are really such a big deal, maybe we can. It's not about the room." My voice echoed off the high ceilings. "It's about years of being treated like nothing more than a convenient source of money. It's about watching both of you live beyond your means while I pick up the bill. It's about Mom and Dad always defending your choices while criticizing mine for being too focused on work that pays for everything." "That's not fair," Mom protested weakly. "No, what's not fair is that I've put my own life on hold to support everyone else's dreams. What's not fair is that I haven't taken a vacation in 3 years because every spare penny goes to bailing out Jake's failed startups or funding Olivia's business ventures." I pulled out the final document, the one my lawyers had prepared last week. "So here's what's going to happen. We're going to redistribute the rooms based on actual ownership shares. I'll take the master suite and the ocean view bedroom. You can sort out the remaining rooms among yourselves." "You can't do this," Olivia whispered, but I could see in her eyes that she knew I could. "I can, and I am. Oh, and one more thing." I reached into my bag and pulled out 4 envelopes. "These are invoices for your shares of the property taxes and maintenance costs for the next year. They're split according to ownership percentage. Mine's already paid." I handed them out one by one. Jake's hands shook as he opened his. Olivia didn't even look at hers. Mom started to cry, and Dad just stood there, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "This isn't what family does," Mom said through her tears. "No, Mom, this is exactly what family should do, treat each other with respect and fairness. I'm just finally demanding what I should have had all along." I picked up my suitcase and headed toward the master suite, leaving them standing in the hallway with their invoices and shattered assumptions. As I reached the door, I turned back one last time. "The celebration starts at 6. I'll be there, in my proper place, not hidden away in a laundry room. I suggest you all take some time to think about how we got here." I closed the door behind me and sat on the edge of the king-size bed, my hands finally allowing themselves to shake. Through the wall, I could hear them arguing, their voices rising and falling like waves on the beach outside. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The sun was setting over Crystal Bay when I finally emerged from the master suite. I'd spent the last few hours unpacking, arranging my things, and trying to ignore the muffled conversations and occasional sobs coming from downstairs. The house smelled of the catering, food I paid for, of course, but the celebratory atmosphere had evaporated. I found everyone in the living room, huddled in separate corners like survivors of a natural disaster. Mom was wiping her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, Dad was staring out at the ocean. Jake was furiously typing on his phone, and Olivia sat curled in an armchair, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. The caterers need to know if we're ready to start, I announced, my voice cutting through the thick silence. 5 pairs of eyes turned to me. I changed into a simple black dress, expensive but understated, much like the jewelry I wore. For once, I wasn't trying to fade into the background. How can you think about dinner at a time like this? Olivia asked, her voice hoarse. You've just destroyed our family. I poured myself a glass of wine from the bar cart, a $3,000 antique I purchased during the renovation. No, Liv, I've just stopped letting our family destroy me. I've been looking at the property documents, Jake said, holding up his phone. There might be a way to challenge. Challenge what, Jake? The math? The legal documents you signed without reading? Or maybe you want to challenge the dozens of times you promised to pay me back and never did. I took a sip of wine. By all means, get your lawyers involved. I'm sure they'd be fascinated by the paper trail of your failed ventures and broken promises. Sarah, Dad finally spoke, turning from the window. We never meant to take advantage. But you did. All of you. I sat down on the sofa, smoothing my dress. Do you know what my financial advisor said when I showed him my accounts? He said I should have been able to retire by 40. Instead, I've drained my savings helping this family maintain a lifestyle none of you can actually afford. Mom made a small choking sound. We've always been proud of your success. No, Mom, you've been proud of what my success could do for you. There's a difference. I looked around the room, taking in the expensive furniture, the art pieces Olivia had insisted we needed, the top-of-the-line electronics Jake had ordered. This house was the last straw. You didn't just take my money this time, you tried to take my dignity too. A knock at the door interrupted whatever response they were preparing. The catering manager stood there, looking uncomfortable. Ms. Mitchell, should we begin serving? I nodded. Yes, please. In the dining room. Are we really going to sit down and eat like nothing's happened? Olivia asked incredulously. No, I replied, standing up. We're going to sit down and eat like adults who need to have a long overdue conversation about boundaries and respect. The next hour was possibly the most awkward dinner of my life. The food was excellent. Herb-crusted salmon, roasted vegetables, fresh bread, but nobody seemed to have much appetite. The only sounds were the clink of silverware and the distant crash of waves. Finally, as the dessert plates were being cleared, Jake broke the silence. I can't afford these maintenance costs. I know, I said simply. Then why? Because you need to understand what things actually cost. Both of you have been living in a fantasy world where Sarah's magic money tree takes care of everything. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Would you like to know your current debt to me, Jake? Not including this house. He paled. That's not necessary. $127,843, I continued. That's what you owe me from your last 3 failed startups, your divorce lawyers, and your Tesla lease. I turned to Olivia. You're at $89,562, counting the loan for your studio, and all the temporary help with your credit card bills. We said we pay you back, Olivia whispered. When? How? Your design blog makes barely enough to cover your coffee habit, and Jake's new company is burning through cash faster than his last one. I looked at my parents. And you too. Do you even know how much I've given you over the years? Mom started to speak, but I held up my hand. It stops now. All of it. I'm not selling my share of the house. I earned it. But I'm done being the family bank. What are we supposed to do? Jake demanded, his voice rising. Just go bankrupt. You're supposed to live within your means, sell the Tesla, move to a smaller studio, Olivia, get real jobs with steady paychecks. I stood up, gathering my wine glass. I did it. I worked 60-hour weeks, lived in a tiny apartment, drove a used car. I earn everything I have. It's time you all did the same. And what about family? Mom asked quietly. What happens to us? I felt a sudden wave of exhaustion. That's up to you. I'm still your daughter, still their sister. I still love you all, but love shouldn't come with a price tag. Walking to the window, I watched the moonlight dancing on the waves. Behind me, I could hear my family whispering, probably trying to figure out how to change my mind. But for the first time in years, I felt completely certain of my decision. The cleaning service comes tomorrow at 9, I said, turning back to them. I'll be here next weekend to set up my home office in the ocean view room. You're all welcome to use the house. That's what it's for. But you'll need to contribute your share of the costs. And if we can't? Olivia's voice was small. Then you'll need to decide what's more important, maintaining appearances or maintaining relationships. I headed for the stairs. I'm going to bed. In my room? The proper one. As I climbed the stairs, I heard Dad's voice. We really messed up, didn't we? Yes, Dad, you really did. But as I got ready for bed in my beautiful master suite, listening to the sound of the ocean through the open windows, I realized something important. This wasn't just about the money, or the house, or even the laundry room and salt. This was about finally standing up for myself, about demanding the respect I'd earned. Maybe tomorrow they'd understand. Maybe they'd realize that true family support goes both ways, or maybe they wouldn't. But for the first time in my adult life, their reaction wasn't my responsibility. I fell asleep to the sound of waves, in a bed I paid for, in a room I deserved, feeling lighter than I had in years. 3 months have passed since that night at the beach house. Autumn has arrived, bringing cooler breezes and earlier sunsets to Crystal Bay. I'm sitting on the wraparound porch, laptop open, working from what has become my favorite spot in the house. A lot has changed in these 3 months. Jake was the first to crack. 2 weeks after our confrontation, his latest startup folded. With no more sister-funded safety net, he had to make real changes. He sold the Tesla, moved to a modest apartment, and shocking everyone, took a regular job as a software developer at an established company. The steady paycheck seems to be doing wonders for his stress levels. Olivia took longer to accept reality. She tried crowdfunding her design business, then attempted to convince her social media followers to invest in her brand. When those efforts failed, she finally did what she'd always refused to consider. She took a job with an actual design firm. Entry level, of course, but it's a start. Last week, she even thanked me for forcing her to face reality. I was living in a bubble, she admitted over coffee. It was easier to ask you for money than to admit I might not be ready to run my own business. Mom and Dad's transformation has been the most surprising. After the initial shock wore off, they sat down with their finances for what Dad claimed was the first time in years. The results weren't pretty, but they're making changes. Mom's teaching more yoga classes, Dad's doing consulting work for local hardware stores, and they're downsizing to a smaller house. As for me, I've reclaimed more than just my rightful bedroom. I've reclaimed my life. My savings account is growing again. I took my first real vacation in years, 2 weeks in Italy, where I didn't check my phone once for desperate financial requests from family members. I've even started dating someone, a client who asked me out for coffee after a meeting. David is successful in his own right and, refreshingly, has never once asked me to invest in anything. The beach house has evolved too. I kept my word about maintaining everyone's access, but with conditions. Each family member has to contribute their fair share of the maintenance costs, even if it's just a small amount. It's about responsibility, not the money. Surprisingly, this has led to some positive changes in our family dynamic. When people have to pay for something, they tend to value it more. The house is kept cleaner. Things get fixed promptly. Everyone contributes to a shared grocery fund instead of expecting me to stock the kitchen. The laundry room, I converted it into a small library, complete with a comfortable reading chair and ocean-themed artwork. Sometimes I sit there with a book, not because I have to, but because I choose to. This morning, I received an email from Jake that made me pause. Sis, I know these past months have been tough, but you were right. I needed this wake-up call. For the first time in my adult life, I'm standing on my own feet. It doesn't feel terrible. P.S. My share of this month's maintenance fee is attached. Later, Mom called. Not to ask for money or complain about their downsizing, but to tell me she's proud of me. Not because of your success, she clarified, but because you have the courage to set boundaries. I'm sorry we made you feel like an ATM instead of a daughter. The sun is setting now, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I can hear waves crashing on the beach below, a sound that once represented stress and obligation but now brings peace. My phone buzzes. It's David, asking if I'd like to have dinner this weekend at the beach house. He's offered to cook. Looking out at the horizon, I realize that sometimes the hardest part of loving your family is learning to love yourself first. It's about finding the strength to say no when every habit and history pushes you to say yes. It's about understanding that real family relationships can't be bought. They have to be built on respect, boundaries, and mutual support. The laundry machines that once occupied my room now sit in a proper utility closet, serving their intended purpose. Much like me, they're exactly where they should be, doing what they're meant to do, no more, no less. As I close my laptop and prepare to head inside, I smile at the framed quote I hung in the entryway the day after our confrontation. Family is not about taking advantage, it's about taking care of each other. Finally, after all these years, my family is learning what that really means. And me? I'm no longer the family ATM. I'm just Sarah, daughter, sister, successful businesswoman, and proud owner of a beautiful beach house with a master suite that has the best view of the sunset. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can give your family is the chance to stand on their own feet, even if it means weathering a storm to get there.